Hello, everybody, and welcome to a wonderful interview that I'm really excited to do. This is an interview with Christopher Griffen, head writer at Mongoose Publishing. Hi, Chris.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for joining me. So you are the head writer at Mongoose Publishing. We're really glad to have you. How long have you been working with Mongoose Publishing? And given you are from, and correct me if I'm wrong, California,
Yes.
how did that process of working for a British company begin?
Yeah. So I guess I've been working for them officially for since October. But before that, I was here for a while in sort of a intern capacity. And then before that, I was a freelancer for many years for Mongoose since about 2018, I think.
I see.
Yeah.
What were you doing before that point?
Uh, Mongoose is my first real foray into writing freelance. But before that, I was a technical writer and a manager of technical writers for various Silicon Valley companies for many, many years.
If you don't mind me asking, what is a technical writer? What does that duty entail?
Yeah, technical writer explains, writes documentation. Nobody fall asleep, please. About how to use various hardware and software for technology companies. So it's sort of like a
So, like manuals?
yeah, exactly, stuff that AI will probably take over writing in the near future.
Hey, everybody, we're enjoying a conversation about our favorite games and not the present dystopia, but we keep coming back to it.
It's
Whee!
unavoidable.
Excellent. So, we're going to be talking a little bit more about you now. So, what was your favorite movie and book growing up? So, we can learn a bit more about you.
Right. So let's see. My favorite movie. Growing up, it would have to be a tie between Raiders of the Lost Ark and Star Wars, and then Blade Runner as a close third, I suppose. More currently, I don't know if I have a favorite movie anymore, but I read a lot of books, and my favorite author is Ian M. Banks and his Culture series. I really like Alistair Reynolds as well. I like a lot of British sci-fi authors. Um, and I guess my favorite of Banks' books would be Look to Windward. It's really dramatic and covers a lot of interesting themes, that philosophical things, as well as tells a great space opera.
That's fantastic. I have more things to add to my ever-growing list of things to read. So
Yeah,
that's great. Thank you
you
very
won't
much.
regret it. It's good stuff.
What gave you the bug to pursue writing when you were younger? Was it always what you did, or did you kind of fall into it? Tell us the story there.
Well, I guess it would have to be fascination with sci-fi shows and movies. I loved stories of particularly of many genres of science fiction, but space opera in particular always had a special place for me. And so role-playing games gave me an outlet to create stories that my friends could participate in, and I created very detailed, documentation or books or things for me and my group to use. And so I was always an organizer of information, and it just kind of contributed to my development as a writer. And I've done a lot of, I mean, as a technical writer, you develop a discipline towards writing. Uh, However, it's writing very cut and dried, boring style. To learn how to write in a more entertaining fashion, I've read a lot of books on the subject and worked on my craft and tried to approach it from an angle of humility, to always learn new things, and then go back and look at your old work and be appalled and try to do better with every new thing you create.
Okay, follow-up question
Hmm.
then. As people, because I imagine a lot of people who are going to be watching this are somewhat enamored with that, with aspiring to such lofty goals themselves. What book or books would you recommend? First question. Second question, given the aforementioned way that you transitioned into the role,
Yeah.
uh, what was that interview like? Did people have confidence in you, or did you have to convince some folks?
So uh, I guess okay. So the first part is what would I recommend? So it's a really well-known writing book. It's called Elements of Style by Strunk and White, and it's Strunk was a writing professor, and White is E.B. White. He wrote Charlotte's Web, among other books, and so they did this little like 100-page book called Elements of Style, and it's written with a little bit of
Mm-hmm.
humor in it too, which makes it fun to get through. Another great, so that book's really important. If you're going to write, you should read that book. It's and you think, oh God, I'm going to be so bored. No, it's pretty entertaining, and even there's an alphabetical section that goes through all these basic technical points of writing. It's pretty entertaining and makes you rethink what you're doing when you're writing. Um, Another book that's really good is another humorous book. See, if you're laughing and enjoying the read, it's you learn better. So, is Eats, Shoots, and Leaves. That's a really good. It's got a picture of a panda with a gun on the cover, and it's the point is where
Love
to
it.
put the comma. If you say eats, comma, shoots, comma, and leaves, it means a different thing than eats, shoots, and leaves, right? So, and then the author proceeds to go
Well
through
done.
all
Let's
kinds of
eat
interesting
grandma,
topics.
essentially.
Right? Yeah, exactly. There are a lot of takes on that.
Yep.
And then recently, if you want to, and then as I've advanced, I found a really good book on writing that you might have to rewind to remember this title. It's called A Swim in the Pond in the Rain, and it's by George Saunders, and he's an American creative writing professor and author whose books are pretty renowned. And A Swim in the Pond in the Rain examines about 7 Russian short stories. And you read the short story, and then he describes how and why it was written. And it sounds super academic, but actually it's super entertaining. And he gets into a lot of interesting topics. And the main one, if you're going to aspire to write, is he goes over something that many people have said for, I don't know, centuries of writing, which is when you speak of writing, the main thing you're talking about is rewriting. Your first shot through a manuscript is going to be
Mm.
trash. And if it's going to be good, you got to go over it painstakingly again and again, minimizing. Don't get caught up in your own voice where like you want to hear yourself speak. Get away from that and think about the reader. And George Saunders' piece of advice that was really great, and I will always take this to heart, is he writes every sentence as if he wants to make sure his reader wants to read the sentence after that. So there, he tries to never have a throwaway sentence, and I shall aspire
Mm.
to be as George Saunders uh, indicates.
One of my favorite writers is Jim Butcher, who writes the Dresden Files series.
Yeah,
And I remember he did an interview where he he had a funny quip where it was like, I don't have writer's block. I have a mortgage. And I thought that was very funny. Like,
yes,
of course you're going to write entertaining books if it's your, I got to make sure this is good. Otherwise I default.
I don't
Nothing
eat.
happens.
Yeah.
So 100%. The second part of the
Oh,
question
yes.
was
You talked about what got me
the
in here.
interview
Hmm.
for, yeah, because you mentioned, and I could have misheard you, that, that was a bit of a jump for you to some degree.
Yeah. So I wrote. So luckily for me, Mongoose has a little program called the TAS, the Travelers Aid Society, and it allows people to generate their own material. And I wrote some adventures and put them up on Drive Through RPG. And one of them that I wrote is called Maker God, and it did really well. It made me a lot of money and did well for and got Mongoose's attention. And so I arrogantly I wrote Matt and said, I wrote this amazing adventure. You should consider hiring me or letting me write freelance for the actual game. And so he put me through the rookie uh, process of having me write some adventures first, and then after I proved the ability to do that, he let me take on a big book, which the first one was Glorious Empire. And wow, that was difficult. That was growing pains to get through. I was so ambitious and excited to work on Glorious Empire, but then once I got into it, wow, it was hard. And and then he gave me Third Imperium after that, which I was a lot more comfortable of a writer then, and I am very proud of my approach to that. Wrote the whole book in 5 months, which was vastly better than my process on Glorious Empire, because I just got up every morning before my day job and wrote for 2 hours at like 5 a.m. to 7 a.m. And then and just kind of went through it very with great discipline. And after that, it just launched into the career with Mongoose. We started talking about me coming over to Britain to work in the office for a while, sort of a little for a period of time, and we thought it would just be a one-off thing, but it ended up going well. So I asked them to hire me, and they consented mercifully.
Jumping on that, you said that Glorious Empire was difficult. Was it because it was a brand new thing, or was that adventure particularly complex in a certain
So
way?
it's a book, and it details a very dystopian area of space in the Traveler Charted Space universe. And it was just difficult because I had never written a book before, other than books that describe how to use software
Well,
and technology hardware.
so what was the first TTRPG you ever played, and can you tell us any distinct memories that you have of that time? Because generally speaking, people don't become they don't have story positions in a company like Mongoose or any other Fable gaming companies without having a certain amount of history behind them, shall we say?
Yes, yes. It will come as no surprise that my first game was Dungeons and Dragons. And we're probably,
Wow.
so we're talking, yeah, no, shocking, right? Some friends were playing
Everybody,
it.
it's fine.
Yeah, and they invited me in, and my memory of it was that they were in what happens with 12 and 13-year-olds. They're in the god stage, where their characters are ridiculously powerful to the point where the game is no longer that fun. Everyone was, 15th to 20th level and able to kill every single monster in the monster manual single-handedly. But in any case, it was a nice introduction to role playing. But while I am a reader of fantasy as well, I've always been a bigger fan of sci-fi and space opera in particular. So I quickly asked the question: is there a sci-fi version of this game? Because I'd rather play that.
Okay. And how did that? So you were already on the hunt for something like Traveler. So I guess let's continue the tale. So you knew what you
Yeah.
wanted, and then when did you get to Traveler?
Oh, I don't know if, I guess they still have game stores, but I went to like a brick and mortar game store. It seems like everything's on the internet now. Well, I was in New York recently and found one that just ignited my inner 13-year-old again. And it was just wonderful. It
Love
was
it.
called 20 sided or 20 sided, something or other. Anyway, it's in Brooklyn. It's really nice.
Love it.
But yeah, I went to a brick and mortar game store in San Jose, California, where I grew up, and it was called D&J Hobby, and it might still be there, but they probably just sell like remote control planes or something like that. But back then they had a nice couple of aisles of role-playing games, and I just wandered through them, and I found the little black books of the original Traveler, the three-book set. And I saw the Free Trader Beowulf thing on the cover, and that was, exciting to me. And I thought,
Mayday, mayday.
yeah, maybe. What is this? I was hooked, and I saw there were all these supplements out for it too. We're talking, this is early '80s, so the game was already pretty well developed. And I snapped them all up and started reading them, and I couldn't put them down, and I've never turned back. Traveler has always been my number one game since that moment.
So this leads me into the next question, which is because you maybe the answer is sort of self-explanatory if you've spent that much time with it. But Traveler obviously has a long storied
Mhm.
history. It's, as in my estimation, one of the games that has one of the most, how do I phrase this, most written about it, and quite a lot in terms of lore and the like. Now I have to imagine that might be intimidating at times in terms of trying to keep everything straight. especially when you're trying to make something new and entertaining.
Yeah, I agree. It's got a huge amount of lore, and I think it both attracts people and puts them off a bit. Although I do think probably fully half, if not more, of people who play Traveler make their own universe. It's got wonderful rules for that. You've got the charted space setting, which is what I like to work in most of the time, but you you are not bound to it. You can easily create your own sci-fi universe, and the game has, as you know, as an avid player, has a lot of sub games that you can do either alone or
Mm.
with a group. And some of those sub games are creating characters. Creating characters is a communal activity. Creating worlds. Just if you could sit down with some of the hex paper and create subsectors and create a whole sector, whatever you want, and creating ships, etc. All of those things are little games within the game that you can play.
But if I'm not mistaken, Mongoose writes their stuff predominantly, if not exclusively, in the charted space system, correct?
Yes.
Which would mean, I suppose, the follow up question to that then is, do is there a process to keep that straight? If you're going, say, in somewhere in the Spinwood Marches, do you then have to spend a certain amount of time getting up to speed with that particular spot? Or is it a situation that you want to try and take a new spin on it? Or does it depend on the project? What I guess I'm saying is, I imagine because there's so much stuff, there's got to be a balance there. And I'm curious about how you approach that as a head writer.
Well, there's got fans of this game that have been playing it for as long as I have, and some of them are very
Sure.
particular about adhering to lore, and I respect and attempt to do that to a very heavy degree. However, you don't want to let it
Mm-hmm.
impede you from telling a good story. Um, there's this balance where if you're going to work in uncharted space, you want to honor what has come before, create something new that people haven't seen before, but also do so in such a way that doesn't completely flout the tradition and history of the game. And I'd like to think that I haven't violated that too many times, but it's a challenge every writer has to face, and we
Mm.
do it with varying degrees of success.
So let me give you an example of the kind of thing I'm thinking about.
Yeah,
So, for lack of a better word, what if I said the Klingon forehead bumps? Do you know kind of what I'm referring
of
to?
course.
So obviously, at some point, the writers in the next generation, they decided we want them to have bumps. That's going to look sick. It's going to sell toys. They'll be distinctive. That's the reason. We know that's the actual reason. However, they didn't really explain it for a long time. Some fans got pissy, and then at some point, if I remember my history, they dedicated an entire episode in a later series to explaining why they got forehead bumps. Now, for me, I thought to myself, is this necessary? Is this required? And I guess that's kind of what I'm asking. Like, can you give an example of where that sort of happened, where you've looked at this and you've gone, yes, I'm aware that this is an established bit of traveler lore. I disagree. And you've gone and done something else with it.
Yeah, you do end up
Mm.
adding things for. Okay, here's an example that I think that
Sure.
just it
Yeah, hit
just
me.
occurred to me. I think I think most people will agree, and this is my belief, that the game was originally intended to be a small ships game. Like one of the first adventure was called Kinunir, and it's about this cruiser, a battle cruiser or something that's 1,200 tons. And if you know Traveler, you know that tons refers to how much displacement it is, not actual weight. But 1,200 tons. And that was thought of, I think, as a big ship at the time they published it. And then they decided later on, as they proceeded in the game and other incarnations came out, no, we're going to have way bigger ships. They came out with a supplement called Fighting Ships, and its biggest ship was 500,000 tons. And it's called the Tigris. Looks like people joke it's the Pac-Man of death because it has a sort of Pac-Man look to it. It's like a ball. And
Legendary.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah. So and there may be ships bigger than that. So the game, as originally designed, was not imagining having these huge ships, and then it later on, much like
sure.
the Klingons that look like just somewhat darker complexioned individuals, became ones with bumps on their heads.
Tanned fellas.
Yeah,
Yep.
we had
Hmm.
then suddenly we have this version of Traveler that still got has that 1,200-ton ship popping around in it, but also it's no longer the battle cruiser of the game. It's there are much bigger ships to contend with.
That's interesting. So it was considered a battle cruiser at the beginning, like so something that could put up a decent fight.
Yeah, it was a bigger version of some of the other. It's 6 times bigger than the next your typical ship, and now they're hundreds of times larger.
I'm gonna make a request here that like next time it comes up, that there's like some sort of like either an adventure or a joke, just like like a delusional owner, like an old man owner who's just like, yeah, my mercenary cruiser that can take on anyone. I'll take on the navy. Who wants to?
Yeah,
Just
absolutely.
like yes, okay.
Yeah, need to be
Sit
vaporized,
down, Grandpa.
almost like swatted away by one of these larger ships with one of its tertiary weapons, really.
So, as of time of recording, June 8th, 2026, here in Australia at least, what has Mongoose released in the past, say, 6 months that you are most excited for people to try out?
Well, that one's pretty easy. It would be the Singularity campaign, which I wrote
Mm-hmm.
over a couple of years. Matt, a few years ago, asked the main writers that he employs, can one of you pitch a big campaign? And I sat down and threw together a concept, and he said, yeah, run with it. And it is big. It's very epic, and it's got 3 acts. Act one, and each act has a very different flavor to it, and you could really run this campaign for years. Or it's actually it was designed in my with different referees in mind. You could really just run the first act, and it's a whole campaign in and of itself because it deals with using a luxury liner and gets into that, and there are mysteries in the background, that sort of thing. And then you advance to the next.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's and it deals a lot with ideas that are pretty relevant right now in the game. It's conscious intelligence, but it's really a lot about it's artificial intelligence is what it's dealing with, and sort of handing over
Wow.
our agency to AI, and to what degree are we comfortable doing that, if at all, and if we do it, how do we control it? It's I'd like to think it will not only be a lot of fun to for players and referees to run, but also I think it'll make them ask some questions in the process, and kind of maybe take people to not only be a role-playing game, but also something that gives you something to think about.
Classic sci-fi. And that's arguably what it should be doing. So
Yeah.
I'm very excited to check it out. You've had a chance to write many campaigns for Mongoose Publishing. What campaign do you think has the most you on the page? And what project are you most proud of at this point?
Singularity has the most me in it, but the individual product I'm most proud of is that second book I wrote, Third Imperium, because before having read George Saunders, I when I wrote Third Imperium, my approach was I want them not just to see this as a role playing supplement. I want this to be entertaining, like a novel. I don't want people to be bored reading the history of the Imperium or learning about its military or its politicians or whatever. I want every page to be something that makes you go, oh, I want to keep going through this. So it serves two purposes. I wanted it to be a narrative, like a novel that you buy and enjoy reading, and also a really valid role playing supplement. And I mean, I guess a third thing is I wanted it to get people away from the Spinward Marches. Traveler, if you play Charted Space, the Spinward Marches is a great place to set your adventures, but the Traveler universe is big, and I wanted to kind of show that there's a different flavor that you can engage in and enjoy, and hopefully I accomplished that. But I'm pretty proud of that book.
So you said Singularity was the most you.
Yeah,
Could you elaborate on that?
uh, yeah. it it I wrote it to be a campaign that I would want to be a player in, because it's got these big dramatic shifts, so that as soon as you feel you've got your feet set, okay, yeah, I get how this narrative is working, it shifts gears on you and puts you in a new kind of story, and I hope it's jarring, but hopefully in a way that is exciting. Like, okay, that was chapter one. We're moving on to chapter two now, and this is just as interesting, but very different. That is what I was going for. Is to something uh, that would appeal to me as a player, so that I stay entertained, and something that's immersive, and something that makes me ask questions. Is and that the I guess finally, well, maybe not finally, but another thing is gives the players agency. I try to write adventures that are not railroads. I want people to be able to take it and make it their own, which people do anyway. It, it's I don't think probably only half or less of people run adventures and campaigns as written. They use it as a toolkit, a starting point, and it's handy to have a narrative that presents itself as something you could go through from chapter one to to the end of the book. But people like to take things and make them their own, and I'd like to think that it serves that the material given in Singularity gives referees the option to make it their own and just take out the parts they like.
That's really cool. I will say, I think you're in good company as far as the system that you're writing for, because, and my players can attest to this as well, the cast of The Bomber, they, it stunned them a little bit, for lack of a better word, because they are used to a certain way of solving problems, even the more role play heavy ones, and instead now they've got access to this whole new world full of tools and machinery. And what do we think this gadget can do, Jack? I don't know, let's figure it out together. And with that in mind, it makes a lot of sense to kind of have that, because obviously in that kind of setting, I think that's kind of the juice, or at least for me, that's part of the juice of it, which is that if we live in this future world, I want to be able to solve it with something that I can recognize, but maybe is quite a bit more powerful, maybe like slightly resembling magic, a la kind of like Star Trek gadgets. Like, wow, that doesn't exist, but I know what it does.
Yeah. Yeah, so yeah, you want the technology to be really interesting and thought-provoking and fun, like something it's this game progression in this game is sometimes about obtaining and using gear, and that's interesting.
So I entered Traveler as a relative newbie. So what we're going to do now, I'm going to ask questions for someone as if they have never heard of Traveler, all of the things that they might want to know. Okay?
Shoot.
First of all, what books do I need to start?
All you need is the Traveler Core Rulebook. It has everything you need to start running a fun and immersive science fiction adventure.
What kind of campaign would you recommend a starting referee run?
So we've got some big campaigns. They're too big for a starting referee. However, we've got some good adventures that are a little more immersive, and of those I would recommend Islands in the Rift, which it operates in a nice compact area, so it makes it accessible, and it gets a new referee to do all the things that are Traveler. One, space flight, combat, vehicle use, and actually traveling among different worlds that have different personalities. So Islands in the Rift is a good one. Another one that would be good is Last Flight of the Amwar, which is another one that gets you traveling through a really bankrupt area of space, and it's pretty fun. And then I'll toot my own horn for one that might work is Exodus, which is the first thing I ever wrote professionally for Mongoose, which Exodus is a nice compact adventure that again has you traveling, solving problems, deciding whether to be empathetic or self-serving, It's got those three, I think, are good intros to the game. Mini campaigns.
So those adventures can all be found on mongoosepublishing.com.
Yes, yeah, we have all of those available for
Excellent.
your perusal.
Speaking of Traveler's Aid Society, do you want to kind of give a little idea of what that might be like for anyone who wants to potentially dip their toe in?
Yeah, come to the Mongoose Publishing website, and there is a page on the Travelers Aid Society in there, and it gives you an explanation of how you go about creating your own content. There are a lot of independent content creators that use it, and you get a little package of graphics and things you can use to make your products, and then you can sell them on Drive Through RPG and make a little money for your effort. Uh, we
Which
discourage.
is how you got the job in
Yeah,
at least somewhat.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I tried to do a good job. I hired a cover artist to give me to make it appealing because
An edge.
yeah, exactly. And try and develop some interior art and my own deck plans and things like that, so that it would hopefully have the appeal of an almost professional quality product. And yeah, it, if you just want to pop your ideas out there, you can go minimalist. But if you really want to make something pretty, you have that ability as well. You just got to invest a little bit in graphics programs and things like that.
So I want to follow up on what you've said. Those are really good campaign adventures as written. However, what about style? So, for example, if I'm not mistaken, in the Mongoose core book, I could be wrong, but I think they give you ideas of what you could run, right? You could run Navy. You could run a merchant thing. You could be taking on passengers. You could be like Firefly. It could be like Star Trek. What would you recommend either to a starting GM, or what do you find fun if you don't want to necessarily commit to that?
I like two tropes. Well, the game has a lot of different tropes, but my two favorite are the tramp trader and the detached duty scout. And that's probably why we publish some comic books as well through Marcosia Publishing, and the two series I write deal with those two tropes. I like the tramp trader trope because it brings in the trade rules, which I will advise referees, make sure to put your finger on the scale if you want. Don't just let the players run with it because they'll get rich in about 15 minutes. You
Yeah.
you pop around
Yeah,
from, yeah,
yeah.
you're familiar with them?
Yeah.
Yeah, it
I have read them, and it's one of those things where I'm just like, I know what some of my players are going to be like. So they when we started season one, I basically, like, they're such lovely players, but like, and they understood logically but not emotionally when I, because they some of them won the jackpot with character creation as an
of
example,
course.
and they know how to spend it because they're experienced players, and they're like, yeah, I'm basically immortal, look at all this gear I have. And I'm like, guys, you're starting in prison. I really want, like this is fine. I will let you have it back at some point, but it's not anytime soon. You do understand that, right? They go, yeah, sure. And then about 3 weeks in, they're like, I miss my stuff. So with
Yeah.
trade, it's going to get nuts, man. I'm just like, oh God, the economy's going to break in like 5 minutes. So I have to
Yes.
have like some sort of mafia ripcord or something like that where they get it all stolen again or
Yeah, I
something
mean
like
that
that.
that's how it would happen anyway. We want a good narrative, right? So
Yeah.
yeah, Tramp Trader is cool because you have that, there's an impetus to go from world to world, trying to buy low and sell high, and it's fun. And I like Detached Duty Scout because the things that's lore, the lore of the scout service is once a scout, always a scout. You never really leave the service even after you retire, and they often give you a ship, but there are strings attached. When they, number one, any intelligence it collects while it's flying around gets automatically sent back to the scout service. And two, if they need you,
Ooh.
they can say, you either got to give us that ship, we need it for a mission, or you perform the mission in the ship that we've loaned you. So it gives you, the referee, another narrative device to pull the player's strings a little bit.
Oh. I'm gonna steal that. Actually, I'm gonna write that down now.
Yeah, if they got a
That's
scout
brilliant
ship,
because
it's
they are using a scout ship as we
yeah,
speak.
it's
So
theirs, but not really theirs. So it still belongs to the
yeah.
government.
What aliens would you recommend to have in your traveler game if you had to have three to start with that they are interacting with and all that stuff?
Yeah, the core rule book presents two of the popular species, and those would be
Right.
the Aslan and the Vargur, and they are very accessible. They have sometimes been over the years accused of being fur suits to wear over your human body, but I think they're a lot more interesting than that. Um,
Hey man, if Star Trek can do it, why not you guys?
right? Yeah,
What's the difference,
that's
man?
true. They but
Who cares?
they're very accessible. You they have some character, some personality points and cultural points that people can really grab onto and play. Um, I urge players to try and be different. If you're going to play one of those aliens, be that alien because it's fun.
Be alien, be different.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it like I mentioned, I'm redoing Aliens of Charted Space One right now, and for example, we add some sections in that book that say like a checklist. If you're going to play a Vargur, here's some things to think about. Like
That's awesome. Because I've been looking for information like that to kind of like throw at the players so that they have like a, a short wiki page of
yeah,
like the culture that they're about to check out. So that's great news. That's great to hear.
great, yeah, yeah, and then so they're very accessible. The Vargur are, genetically engineered wolves from Terra, so they're accessible. Right down to the point of if you're playing them when you get excited, or you should howl. uh there's
Yeah, yeah,
certain
yeah.
character behavior, but you also are intelligent, so play a savant species. And the Aslan are very sensitive, very, some people say, samurai like in a way. They're super focused on honor. There are other aspects to them. Those two are very accessible aliens. But I really urge the player to do just you don't want to hand over a 200-page book to a player and say you have to read this to play the alien. No, take a look at this
Yeah.
checklist and try those things,
Yeah.
and to play this
What
alien, you're gonna have
about a
fun.
third? To not necessarily to play, but like this is the universe that they're going to be interacting with for the next 6 months.
Yeah,
What's a culture that you're like, this is sick. They should interact with this.
this would be next level because it gets more difficult to play them. But I like the Hivers. Because they are very alien, they're not as accessible as the Aslan or Vargur, and they are manipulators. And people misunderstand that notion. They think, oh, manipulation, you're trying to trick me. No, it's part of their personality. So find ways that you can play them that involve that. Basically, you see everything, you see the universe around you as a series of knobs and buttons to be pushed and turned, and it's so that things can be done more efficiently. And
I see.
you should have a very alien mindset. I think they're a really interesting species, and they are more than just wearing a fur suit by far. They're basically like intelligent
Definitely.
starfish. So uh, it,
Wow.
they're a good species to
That,
play.
that I'm stealing that too. Let me write that down.
Yeah, yeah. If and then Traveler has other human cultures as well, and the one that's popular to play are the Jodani because they have psionics,
Yes.
and that's another good one to involve in your game.
Yes. So, what kind of party would you recommend for a starter game? Now, obviously, travel is a little bit harder to quantify in that respect because if you do it traditionally, you kind of just get what you get, right? But what would you say would be a good balance of skills or archetypes, if you like, if you were doing a campaign for people who've never played before? What would you recommend that people aim for as far as skill allocations or backgrounds?
I wouldn't recommend any. I would let them get used to the Traveler generation. I'm sorry, Traveler creation rules, and decide what they want to go after, but be ready for the game to throw something different at you. Have a basic personality trait in mind. That we got there's a podcast that's called Signals from the Core by one of the fans of the game. He mentioned recently that I thought he did a really nice job of describing this. He said, you might come in something to the effect of, you might have this idea of, I want to be this ace pilot. And, you're picturing, Han Solo um, or other famous characters from science fiction that you want to emulate. Traveler will ruin your dreams sometimes. Sometimes it will be very generous to you depending on your die rolls, and sometimes it will turn you into take you on a path you didn't expect. So instead, come at it from the approach of a personality trait. And the one that he came up with in his recent podcast was, I want to be the guy that lifts everybody up when the chips are down. you know you can, because you can just role play that. It's not in your statistics. It's a personality trait that you decided you would have. And that way, however your character comes out, you can still do that no matter what. So
Yeah, that's brilliant. That's a really good thing I'm going to steal for future games, actually, because it allows the players to have still the feeling of a bit more control. Mind you, when I talk to my players, what I basically said to them was, as soon as you start, just be prepared for nothing to work out the way you want it to. That is the fun of it. Don't resist it. Don't fight it. This is not that kind of game. This is a game that reflects life almost, where you're just like, yeah, I'm going to be famous. And then then you're homeless at 32 or something like that.
yes.
Stuff happens to you.
And don't get hung up on balance, because some guy in your group or some person in your group is going to have all the luck and all the die rolls are going to go their way, and they are going to have their Ensign Flandry or their super character who has all the skills they wanted and is strong and good looking and, and successful. And then there are going to be those that don't. It doesn't matter. It's what you bring to it that matters. If a game of Traveler is well run, it's not about, do I have more points than the next guy? It's about participating in that adventure. The character that was rolled up, that had the least success in their generation, can be the most interesting character in the story. It's you don't. I guess I've already said it like twice. Don't get hung up on the balance thing. It isn't a game designed around balance like Dungeons and Dragons, where each character has more or less an equal development path, and they get more and more powerful over time. This is not like that.
One of our favorite characters on the show is played by one of my oldest friends, Karen, who had a certain idea and she knew the warnings and all that stuff, but it was amazing how much the character system kicked her in the crotch, and she ended up with this cultist that was kicked out from being a pirate because she failed to qualify for being a pirate. So she justified it that her pirate family kicked her out. And so she's basically been this drifter for most of her life, and then finally kind of got things together when she met another PC who's a scientist, and she was starting to get a life together, trying to get materials for her so she could do experiments, and then they're arrested and they're in prison. So she's had a really rough life, but I think she's like most people's favorite, and it's because basically Karen's just like, this woman would be basically nuts at this point. She's had no luck whatsoever, and she's brilliant. So yes, I absolutely agree. Leaning into it is the best thing you can do.
Yeah, and if you were watching a movie or a show or reading a novel about these characters, probably a lot of people will be attracted to that one that had the least luck, because she has made that person interesting.
What, in your estimation, is the most important rule in Traveler for referees to remember? Like, if you had to remember one thing, like if you got one thing locked in your head, this is what you tell them.
Task check requires a roll of 8 or higher. There you go.
Love that.
2 dice. You can sit down with a pair of dice, and then you can, if things get more difficult, you can move it. You can add minuses or pluses, or they're positive or negative DMs to make it more challenging. 8+. You're going after 8+ every time you roll 2 dice.
What are the essential elements to have a well-run Traveler game? So say it's a one-shot. Say
Right.
it's like a one-shot where you're sitting down for 3 hours, what would you, if you were writing it down for your mates, have for sure to show off the system and what it can do?
Okay, I would, if I were sitting down for a one shot, I would I would make sure I had at least the personalities in mind of three interesting characters, NPCs for them to talk
Okay.
to. In my experience in Traveler, the more interesting the supporting characters are in the story, the better it is. Two, I'd have them travel. The game's called Traveler for good reason, and have the places at least one place to another. One, make them jump one time, and at least maybe two, and have the places be very different, so they can see when I leave this one world that has an authoritarian government and troops and surveillance systems watching my every move. Then I go to this other place and it's a complete anarchist free for all. Show that contrast. That when you travel, things change, and so travel, interesting characters, get them in, give them, and then choices. Let them make choices, and combat's really down the list. Fighting can be fun, but it's also very deadly in Traveler. It's easy to get killed. But if anything, if there's going to be a fight, which does be fun, make sure that if it's a one shot, so who cares if they die? But if but one thing that you'll learn in Traveler combat, if you want to add that as maybe the fourth most important thing, is make sure it's not a fair fight. And by that I mean whoever you're going to go up against, they have lesser armor, lesser guns. You ambush them, get every advantage on your side, and it almost sounds like a little bit min-maxing. Like, well, how is that fun? No, trust me, it's still fun. It doesn't matter that you're likely to win. The feeling of danger and narrative excitement is still present.
What kind, beyond science fiction, obviously, what kind of genres or stories can you tell with Traveler?
There is no limit to the kind of stories you can tell, because it's a 2 die 6 system that involves use of skills and abilities, measures out a character for you. You can do any genre with this system. I'm confident of that.
What is your personal favorite part of Traveler that keeps bringing you back? So obviously you started a long time ago.
Yeah.
You knew what you wanted and you got it. But something in that experience, once you finally played it, you went, this is it. This is the one for me. What is that? And if it's changed, feel free to share with us. What is it that keeps bringing you back to Traveler?
I love starships, and mainly I like deck plans. I think the thing, like I
There you
played
go.
original Traveler, but the
I like
supplement.
that wasn't a deep answer. It was just like,
No,
pew, pew. I love it. It's
spaceships.
fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah,
The
100%.
the
Let's
original
go.
game. Yeah, the original game had a supplement 7. I remember it, or even the numbers. Traders and gunboats, and it had all these deck
Oh, yeah.
plans of these little ships. And as a kid, like a teenager, I was hooked. I thought, this is, now I know what stateroom I live in. Here's where I go to pilot the ship and look out the window. It just piques your imagination. So for me, that's the thing that kept bringing me back. Ships and pictures of them and their deck plans. Really, in the reverse order of that. The deck plans are the most important thing that kept me coming back.
On that note, one of the things that I, as a fan, burgeoning fan, a relatively new fan of the whole thing, would love to see more of, and I'm going to put this bug in your ear in case
Good.
like you can make it happen. 3D digital approximations and or like I'm sure you might have seen these like in the YouTube space, those study music things where it's just like you play it. Essentially, you can be like in any environment. You Google whatever you want. You could Google haunted house ambience 3 hours and you've got that, right? I'm suggesting to you talk to a 3D artist.
Yeah.
You get the cockpit of a scout ship
Yeah.
and other classic ships, and it's just Traveler radio for 3 hours. Phew!
Very
You're
cool.
off. The people will flock to that. So I'd be 800,000 of it,
Well,
I would
did you know
say.
we produce? I mean,
So
this is just one aspect of that, but did you know we produce original music for some of our campaigns?
excellent, good start,
Yeah.
right? So you smush that together with a nice visual,
Yeah.
and you're off to the races. So I'd love to see a three. That is one separate thing. But what I was originally talking about is like it would be cool as heck to have something where you're like it wouldn't have to be overly flashy, like almost like a walking tour.
Yeah.
I think Nintendo did something similar where it was showing off its tech in a fun way for the Switch too. But
Yeah.
imagine that as like, welcome to your scout ship. Here is where and blah blah blah. And you're going around. It's like a virtual real estate space. I think they
Yeah.
have those now. 360 camera.
Yeah.
That'd be pretty cool.
That
That's
would
all
be
I'm saying.
cool. We have the tools to make that happen. So maybe down the road.
Yeah, that would be awesome. Where can someone easily find information on the Traveler universe and the alien species that live within it?
Okay, well, obviously our books. Not to do my put on my marketing hat all the time, but there's some free resources as well. Once you get a sense of how the world building works, which is you have the universal world profile, where it's a small string of numbers and letters that tell you the characteristics of a world in Traveler. And there's a tool online called Traveler Map, travelermap.com, and
We know
that's
it well.
yes, of course, with the two L's, and yeah, and it's got all of charted space and some not mostly it's official sectors, but it's also got some unofficial sectors that uh, have not fully been approved from the long history of the game.
Sure.
That's a really nice tool you can use and learn about the get after you understand the rules of how the world's statistics work. You can go all over the place and sort of imagine these different set parts of the setting, or use them to inspire your own if you like doing a homebrew. And then what else? There's Traveler Wiki. That it's the thing about the Traveler Wiki is it's got a lot of information in it. You could go in there and then start looking, get down a rabbit hole that is not where you intended. It's got what you want, but make sure you make very directed searches to the things. Like if you want to look at the Varger, there's a section on the Varger. If you want to look at the Aslan, there's a section on the Aslan. So that's a nice free place to start exploring as well.
So the next question I have, which is actually related, because you pointed out that it has two L's, which is not the typical spelling, unless I'm going nuts. What's up with that? That has nothing to do with anything. You just brought it up, and since I have the head writer in front of me, I might as well ask why.
Why?
Why did they? Do you happen to know
Well,
why does it have two L's in
so
this
it's
case?
it's the British spelling of traveler, right?
Is it? Well, there you go. That's an easy one.
But it wasn't a British game initially. It was invented by Mark Miller, Lauren Wiseman, and Frank Chadwick, and
Yeah. Right.
others
Okay.
who were from like Illinois, in the United States. So I think it was just an elegance that they felt they were adding just a simple little grammatical choice that added a level of intrigue to the game.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, there you go. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Since you brought it up, I hadn't had that written down, but that's a good question. Are there any shortcuts or things you've learned about the Traveler rule system that you'd like to impart on people? So, for example, one of the biggest obstacles for my group has been the crunching of numbers. This is what you need to do
Right.
to go here. This is technically what's required to jump. Is there anything, and this can be homebrew if you like, that in your experience as a GM that you've kind of created a sort of go between to kind of keep things moving? Anything like that? Any tips you'd like to offer?
Yeah, I can just right away I can think of two. Number one is I turn a lot of the
Yeah.
agency over to them. I present the
Okay.
narrative and they have things they want to accomplish, right? It's a narrative, it's a shared
Uh-huh.
narrative. I don't sit there and have in my mind a hidden thing in my palm that they need to guess to solve the problem. I say, how do you want to get through this airlock that's locked? how do you do it? And if they say, I use mechanic skill and I try and break in. Well, it's got another level of security. What do you do to handle that? One of the mechanics is task chains. You can involve two different travelers to work together on something. I think those tools are nice because it lets them solve the problem however they choose to, and then they can work together, which brings the table together. One of the things I don't like when in a role playing game is when it feels like everyone is there completely playing separately and not participating in the shared narrative. I like to see players talking to each other and doing more than just waiting for the referee to say the next thing. I like them to own it. So let's see. And then I got lost in
Excellent.
my own thought there. So the one is turn it over to them. The initial question was what to,
Shortcuts, essentially anything that you,
oh yeah,
over a long time playing the
yeah.
game, that you are like, yeah, this is how it's written, but this is how I do it.
I want I'm selfish. When I'm refereeing a game, I want a story. I want someone to give me the same enjoyment I get out of reading a book, watching a show or a movie. I want to be entertained by the narrative. So stuff that gums up the narrative, I try and get out of the session. And do in the spaces in between. Like something that'll happen in games is the shopping session because they want to spend in a fantasy game, spend your gold, and Traveler, spend your credits. I find that to be extraordinarily dull, and so
Same.
I say, okay, as best I can, I allot those moments to in between sessions, and we have these wonderful tools now like Discord or uh, or well, Discord it works really nicely for that, or email or something that lets you
Definitely.
handle those things between sessions. Um, uh, Trade can also be handled between sessions sometimes. Sometimes it's got to be handled in, but anything that blocks up the narrative and has half your table bored, I try and get away from. So
That's actually a great tip for me because that was kind of the concerns because I'm trying to run an entertaining show in a similar way for the bomber. And there's
yeah,
things that I love to do, like trade, but it's yeah, slightly concerning about how long that might take. Coming on the tail end now, how would you convince a group on the fence on playing Traveler? How would you what's the elevator pitch?
the elevator pitch is if you like science fiction, this game will let you play any story you want to play, and it's got all the flexibility you need to do that.
If you were going to recommend another game that isn't Traveler in the Mongoose library, what would it be and why?
For a completely different experience, give Shield Maidens a go. It's a cyberpunk Norse mythology mix, which will kind of with a really interesting and developing lore, and has you play the role of a shield maiden. It's very specific and who your protagonist is going to be. I think people will find it interesting if they give it a go.
I'm very excited to try it out at some point, especially with that sort of Pendragon style of constriction in a positive way, which is if you're playing Pendragon, you're a knight. You're not a mage, you're not a squire, you're not this, you're not that. Although I think you can play a squire, so that's not the greatest example. But mostly, you're either a squire, training to be a knight, or you're a knight. That's what you are. That's the game. And Shield Maiden's similar in that way. That's very exciting.
Yeah.
And finally, please, for our final question, Christopher,
Yeah.
finish this sentence. In Traveler, you never forget
Your first jump, your first travel from one world to another.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you giving up your time, Chris. Where can people find you on the internet? And would you like to promote Singularity one more time and where people can find that?
Sure, yeah. Mongoosepublishing.com is where you can find all of our games. And of course, Traveler Singularity is also present there. Also, we have a series of comics, which I'm very proud of. And for that, you could go to Markosia Publishing. It's Markosia. We've got two series for that. I think they make actually for a nice narrative narrative introduction to Traveler. At least when I was writing them, that was my thinking: is let's entertain the people that already know this game and intrigue people that don't, to go, oh, this lore and universe looks interesting. So there's another avenue people can find some of our stuff.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much for being here, and we look forward to playing more of Traveler in Season 2 of The Bomber. Thanks again.
I can't wait to watch it. I'm going to be all over it now. I'm looking forward to it. I've got a whole season to watch. How many episodes?
Thank you, 15.
Fantastic.
1-5.
I'm always looking for good entertainment, so thanks very much. I can't wait to watch it.
Well, that's very kind. We're looking forward to hearing your feedback. And thanks, everyone. As always, know that people can like you exactly as you are and that you matter. We will see you soon. Bye, everyone.
Awesome.